Welcome to Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at Benny Keith is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Heaping Spoonful, a podcast where we typically visit with some of the Mid-South's top chefs and restaurateurs, but in today's case, we're turning the spotlight on one of the Mid-South's top distillers of fine, and I do mean fine, spirits. I'm Kelly Bass, and I'm proud to be your host on Heaping Spoonful. Like many of you, I'm sure, so many of my best memories involve fabulous food and fabulous drinks. I was lucky to cover the restaurant and bar scene for a couple of Little Rock newspapers and magazines for more than 30 years. And now, thanks to the folks at Benny Keith Foods, I'm a podcaster. My guest today on Heaping Spoonful is Phil Brandon, the owner and operator of Rocktown Distillery, an award-winning and extremely popular spot in downtown Little Rock, Arkansas. So welcome, Phil.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Kelly.
Glad you're here. I'd say that, there's a lot of success stories in the hospitality business that are pretty predictable. They don't happen that often, but they're somewhat predictable. For instance, someone starts working in a restaurant as a busboy in high school and then moves into the kitchen and goes to culinary school eventually and then becomes a renowned chef and then one day opens his own restaurant. And that's an impressive, but it's a pretty straight line. But a guy with an electrical engineering degree from Texas A&M, which is a very prestigious university, opening the first legal distillery in Arkansas since Prohibition, that is not so predictable. So walk us and our Heaping Spoonful listeners through your stops between graduating with an electrical engineering degree in College Station, Texas, and then years and years later opening Rocktown on 6th Street in what's now known as the East Village neighborhood of Little Rock in 2010.
Wow. Okay.
Long time. Yeah.
That's a long question, but I'm a Little Rock native, born and raised here in Arkansas. My mom was born and raised here. Her dad was born and raised here. We could keep going back.
Right.
But you get it. I'm an Arkansas guy. I was a foreign exchange student, basically down to Texas A&M.
Right.
And got my degree in engineering down there in electrical. And as luck would have it, I came back to Little Rock for my first job out of college. I sold electrical supplies. Right. I was a sales engineer, if that's such a thing. But I called on manufacturing facilities and plants throughout the South, mainly Arkansas, but, some in Mississippi and some in northern Louisiana and places like that, selling electrical controls for processing, everything from chicken plants to sawmills and all that. Basically did that for 14 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And kind of for a couple different companies and decided, I really wanted to make a change. I wanted to do something different. And at this time, Alltel was starting to grow and, a lot of my friends and acquaintances and were working at Alltel. So I wanted to try to get a job at Alltel. So turned around, I got a job at Alltel as a sales manager for the indirect channel and worked there for about a year and a half, maybe two, when the bottom dropped out and the 2000 tech stock bubble burst, and Alltel had a big layoff, and my position got changed, and I got demoted, and my pay dropped by 45%.
Ooh.
And I was like, I might have to find something else. And then I went to work for another telecom here in town that had a, service selling more telecom type stuff. And they filed for bankruptcy and laid me off 6 months after joining that team. So
time to regroup, right?
Time to regroup and figure things out. And so I got a job doing sales for a IT company that did, IT consulting
Sure.
Did that for about a year and a half and didn't like that very much, but went on to a company that you might be familiar with called Advanced Cabling Systems.
Well.
And worked there for about 6 months until I got a job back at Alltel and a role that I really enjoyed, and it was awesome. And worked there for about 4.5-5 years until Verizon came and bought them.
Sure.
And then a bunch of me and a bunch of my contemporaries, there's jobs were going away. They were either going to Atlanta or to New Jersey or that sort of thing. And being an Arkansas native, I just didn't want to go anywhere. My family's from here, and my mom and my wife's parents and our kids were in school and the whole thing. So it's like, where am I going to go? And at this time, there really weren't any other companies in Little Rock that needed somebody that did the kind of things I was doing at Alltel.
Sure.
I mean, it's like, what do you do? So over the course of all this time, though, I had developed an interest in whiskey as a consumer, passion for it, if you will. I read about it.
Sure. Well, the enjoyment of and understanding of craft cocktails and craft spirits was coming up then. It wasn't just a bottle of Jack or something.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was really about, Scotland and learning about scotches and reading about, I'd go to Colonial and walk down the aisle and buy whatever scotch was on sale that week and take it home and drink it some over the weekend. And the next day at work during a break, Google the, XYZ Distillery and what makes their whiskey different and blah, blah, blah. And I realized that my engineering and process control background was applicable in the manufacturing of spirits. What we do is we're a manufacturer, right? And so all that background helped me decide that I too could make spirits. I could make whiskey. I could make vodka, and I could use my knowledge that I already had and, learn the rest through the hiring of consultants and that sort of thing. And so I ended up deciding that, I was going to put together a plan and try to start a distillery.
Sure. Which is clearly, you've had steady paying jobs for all your career, and you kind of get used to that check coming in, and you got a family and all that. It's, you're out there on a limb somewhat. Now, again, the environment was ripe for it because of the interest in those kind of things. And the fact there was nothing like that here. So once you got your plan together, did you walk down to your local bank and say, hey, Mr. Banker friend, do you want to help finance my dream to build a cool distillery in Little Rock?
Yeah. So, I put together the plan and, spent some time over at UALR at the Arkansas Small Business Technical Institute.
Yeah, those are good folks.
And they helped me, I guess, do a reality check on it and everything. And then went around and pitched it to several banks. Luckily, it just takes one.
Yeah.
But, I got a ton of no's, bunch of, you've never done anything like this before. What do you know about whiskey? Right. What do you know about making vodka? How is this going to work? How could this possibly... You've never done this. You've got no track record. No. So, but, the folks over at Centennial Bank were interested, and Jeff Hildebrand was like, well, let's see what we can do. And this was, 2009, right? So this was...
Right. The recession was, coming on strong.
The worst recession since the Great Depression, right? Yeah. So there were some stimulus loans that had become available through SBA. And so through the Small Business Administration, I got a loan. I raised a little bit of money from friends and family and rolled my Alltel 401k into the company to fund it. And, we started with, a shoestring budget for sure.
Had you already started looking for a team? Because clearly, while you could certainly research and figure out how to be a distiller, I'm sure it helps to have somebody who's been down that road a little bit before. And we had, just to set the stage for people who aren't familiar, Little Rock had by that point, several breweries, probably starting with Vinos, and then we had Diamond Bear, and we were starting to get a few. But making beer and making whiskey, there's a relationship because it's alcohol involved and fermentation and things, but it's not the same thing. Had you started looking around for folks who could help you pull off what you wanted to pull off?
Not really. It was, I went to Kentucky and met with the still makers. Vendome, which is in Louisville, Kentucky, is the largest and oldest still maker in the world. And they make, stills for Maker's Mark and Jack Daniels and Jim Beam and Four Roses and anybody in Kentucky, right, that you've heard of. So I, called them and met with them, and they're like, yeah, the guy you need to talk to is a guy named Dave Pickerel. And Dave was a former master distiller from Maker's Mark.
Wow.
And he had left Maker's Mark and started a consulting business. And so I met with Dave and Rob from Vendome and set up the deal to buy a still and hire Dave to be my consultant.
Right, and help you figure it all out. So from that point, when you got a consultant on board who obviously knew his stuff, he'd been a master distiller from Maker's Mark, and you were buying equipment from the top seller of that, who all the big boys buy from. From that point in time, how long did it take you to get that installed and start at least testing out some product?
I ordered this still in November of 2009, and July of 2010 we were running.
Okay, cool. That seems, again, from a distance, just like y'all got it going pretty quickly. And
that's the thing is, I was not like one of these guys that made a bunch of money at Alltel, and this was a hobby thing.
Right.
I had a cubicle, and
sure, you had a real job,
and had a mortgage and car payments and kids in school and the whole thing, and I needed a job.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have time to sit around and, hem-haw around about, let's do this or that. It was, let's get this thing up and running and try to make something.
Sure.
So,
your wife, Diana, who has, been with you every step of the way and many steps before you ever got here,
right.
She had a job, but she's not making a ton of money, and
she's an organist, a choir director, so
right.
not
church salaries are not known for being huge,
right.
Yeah, so I understand you got to get going. So as anybody who knows about spirits, is that some of them, like whiskey, like Scotch, the brown ones, they take some aging.
Right.
So you can't open your door today and start selling whiskey tomorrow. Now, some things don't. And my memory is that the first two products that came out from your distillery were vodka and gin.
Right.
But I'm sure at the point you were starting to make vodka and gin, you were making the things that would become your whiskey after they'd been in a barrel for a while. Did you start with several products? It's just that vodka and gin could be sold quickly, and some of the other things took a while?
Right, yeah. The first thing off the still was, whiskey, and then, vodka, and then gin. But the whiskey had to go in the barrels to be aged.
Yeah.
So vodka and gin are clear, don't require aging, so that we could, start generating revenue as quickly as possible.
Right. And so vodka and gin, so you said you were up and running in September of 10?
Mm-hmm.
And was it pretty much vodka and gin coming out your door pretty quickly after that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right, for sure.
And looking back on those earliest products, what's your assessment of those?
Yeah, they were not so good. Yeah.
Were you worried that less than favorable reviews out of the gate might reduce your chances for success down the road, or did you just figure that was just part of doing business?
Well, I think anybody that's been in business long enough knows that mistakes are made, and it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up again.
Sure.
And I think it really helped in one way in that I had to work extremely hard to get really good at what I did.
Right.
If I was going to have any chance at keeping it going. And, the first 5 years were super hard. super hard.
Well, I was actually one of my primary side hustle before I became a podcaster was a partner in a liquor store, and we had your products from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, that doesn't really taste like vodka as I know it, doesn't really taste like gin as I know it, but we were loyal to bringing your brand in because you were local. And again, we were excited to see that happen. And I will tell anybody, and again, unless you're in Arkansas, you might not have a chance to, and I will talk more about your distribution because I may be completely wrong. I know that I can walk into any liquor store around Arkansas, and I certainly can walk into your own distillery and purchase your products. And you have certainly learned, and your team has learned how to make really good vodka. I know you're 12 years in, but your vodka is the best vodka for the price I can even imagine. And I have put it side by side with a fairly famous one out of Texas that sells for just about exactly twice as much as yours.
Right, yeah.
And you either tie or you win most of those taste tests.
Right.
And it's Rocktown Vodka is the house vodka. I'm happy to say, not at my house because that's only for me, but I was just at Brewed and Barley in North Little Rock. Rocktown is what they're pouring.
Yeah.
And so, ultimately, once you got it right, and it certainly didn't take all the way till now to get it right. It got right pretty quick. That's really, and I've read some things that say that's your number one seller. It also really kind of boosted your business and became your signature product from a volume perspective, not from a winning awards type perspective.
Right.
So, and it remains a big deal.
Yeah. It's been huge for us. So.
Yeah. And so after vodka and gin were out, and obviously vodka is always going to sell more than gin just because more people are vodka fans and you can make more different cocktails with it. So what came next? How long were there other things that maybe some of your flavored things that came out before your whiskey was ready?
Yeah, so around this time, the Moonshiner show on Discovery Channel, got to be big, and that's when I came up with Apple Pie Lightning.
Oh yeah,
and
good stuff.
And so we had White Lightning and we had Apple Pie, and Apple Pie really was the huge thing that kept the lights on for quite a while.
Yeah. Now, did you do that in 2 proof levels, or was that 100?
No, the original was 40. Okay. It was later, several years later that we came up with the 100.
Yep. Well, we'll talk more in a bit about the awards your whiskeys have won, and we're talking about some prestigious ones. But keeping things in chronological order, do you think in terms of critical acclaim that it was one of your bourbons that really kind of brought not just the general public, but the whiskey or the spirits-loving people to know more about you?
Yeah, so in 2013 was really kind of our biggest award that kind of put us on the map. There's an award competition thing in the UK called the World Whiskies Awards, and we sent some bottles over there for that, and got best bourbon at the World Whiskies Awards in 2013, and it was just kind of crazy. I had no idea, right? And so I ended up getting distribution to sell our products in the UK. Wow. And went over and spent some time selling in Scotland and in London and around. So that was super cool. And it was kind of a whirlwind thing, but it really did take that one award to really kind of give us the the
reputation, the
reputation.
It's like, hey,
right.
No, and people who take their whiskey seriously take those awards seriously, and for it to be, it didn't happen at the Arkansas State Fair. It happened in the UK. Nothing at the State Fair,
right,
but this was that's real validation, and that outside validation can mean a lot more than your own advertising and your own hyping of your own stuff. So, well, that's cool. So that was in 2013. So you didn't have to wait terribly long for something cool like that to happen. So that's great.
Right.
Well, listen, we're going to take a short break here on Heaping Spoonful. We'll be back in just a bit with Phil Brandon of Rocktown Distillery.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Kelly Bass.
Welcome back, everybody, to Heaping Spoonful, and we're going to continue our conversation with Phil Brandon. So, in 2010, when you opened Rocktown, again, I told you my primary side hustle was being a partner in a retail liquor store. But the thing that first got me in your facility, because they would bring the product to me, I didn't have to come get it, was to take a tour. I'd been on several brewery tours, including Budweiser, before we ever had tours here, and I kind of knew how beer was made, and I mostly was an excuse to go try different beers. But this was my first time to learn how spirits were made. But they were a big draw then, and you were in a much smaller place, both in terms of production and in terms of the crowd-facing side of the business. And they still remain a big deal for you, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because you all do how many of them across a week? Because you're open 6 days a week, every day but Monday.
And we have 3 tour slots every day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
So they don't all fill up, but,
Sure, the weekend ones.
The weekend ones do, and generally every day of the week we have somebody taking a tour at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I've pulled up with, I'm never thinking what the tour times are and going, man, the parking lot is packed. I got to find a street spot. It's tour time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've done the tour several times, a couple of times at the old location and a couple of times there on South Main Street. And I'm always struck by how many products you get to try. Now, I'm not talking about that you're getting people drunk, because they're really small portions, but it gives you a vast array of things to try, from the things, the flavored ones to even, to your higher end stuff. So I guess that's just, you want to give people a broad exposure to what all you have.
Right. That's the idea is, not everybody likes vodka, not everybody likes whiskey, not everybody likes gin, not everybody likes, some of the liqueurs or whatever, something sweet. So we give you a little bit of an array of things so that hopefully, there's something in the group that appeals to you.
Yeah. And are any of your higher end bourbons included on that?
We do just the standard stuff, not any of the single barrels.
Yeah, but the standard stuff's still high end. I mean, it's right. It's not a $15 bottle of whiskey.
We have a tour on Thursdays. It's called the Whiskey Enthusiast Tour, where we just pour whiskeys and give you a full tasting of a lot of different things that we make.
And then you also have some cocktail classes, right, where you can come learn how to make.
Right. We do that on Tuesday nights, and that's cocktail class night. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you look back on the 12 years, those awards and those bourbons, those look like to be a real turning point. But I'd say, again, from looking from a distance, another huge turning point was moving from East 6th Street to South Main Street.
Yeah.
Talk about the differences in those locations in terms of ability to produce, parking, accessibility, neighborhood, all of those things.
Well, when in 2010, when we opened down on East 6th Street, we were the only thing down there. There was nothing. Lost 40 didn't exist. Nothing. Yeah. It was a dilapidated, deserted building, basically. Still one empty across the street. The parking lot, was non-existent. So it was really just a facility that 15,000 square feet that we could use, and it was actually owned by a guy that I went to high school with. So it kind of worked out that I could lease it, and they were happy I did, because they weren't generating any revenue from it or anything, and it'd been empty for 4 or 5 years. Fast forward to 3.5 years ago when we moved to Main Street, it was just one of those things where I needed more space. I needed to, be able to do more. And this building came available on Main Street. And it was like, oh my God, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So, jumped in and bought the building. We don't lease. We own it.
Better, right?
We own it.
Your own landlord.
We went from 15,000 square feet to 26,000 square feet. Much bigger space to be able to do tours and tastings and operate a cocktail bar, and much more room for production and storage and all that good stuff. So
and again, and you can tell me, either just before or after you made the move, I believe you led the effort at the state capitol to get the legislature to pass a law that allowed you to sell your own products at your location. Breweries have been doing that forever. You can walk into Diamond Bear and buy a beer and drink it, but you couldn't walk into Rocktown. You could do the tour and you could buy a bottle to take with you, but you couldn't buy a bourbon and Coke for cash over the barrel head.
Yeah.
So what was that? Just again, was that work with you're the only distiller at that point in time for sure. Did you just get a hold of folks and say, man, we need to get this law passed?
Yeah, well, I've been instrumental in changing 3 laws for the distilling industry in Arkansas. It began in 2011 to allow us to sell by the bottle.
Right.
So in 2010, when I started the facility, it was, thanks for coming for a tour. Here's a list of liquor stores that you can go buy it at, man. Right? So in 2011, I worked with the ABC, and we went through, the whole legislative process of changing a law. It's a law. It's not just somebody going, okay, you can do this now. And so that was 2011. Come around to 2017, I did the same. I worked with the legislature and went through the House and the Senate and the House committee and the Senate committee and got the law changed to allow distilleries to sell what they make by the drink.
Yeah.
And not just what we make, but we could also, I added, wine and beer, right, and to be able to buy mixers and other spirits to be able to actually do a cocktail bar, not just, what we make. And then this past year, I worked with some other distillers in the state, and we got the law changed to where now small distilleries can self-distribute. Where before you had to sign with a distributor to get your product into liquor stores, now up to a certain gallonage, you can self-distribute.
Which obviously takes a middleman out of the deal.
Right. And a distributor, it's hard for them to, carry a very small brand that nobody knows or,
sure,
so gives these, newer distilleries a chance to get their footing and figure out what they want to do. And
they can convince the bar owner or the liquor store owner to sell their product, and they can do it without trying to get one of the big boys to put it in their catalog among so many other things. Now, you guys are big enough that you are distributed by a distributor, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we always have been.
Yeah. Because the law didn't exist until you got it passed.
And we're with Moon Distributing here in Arkansas. They're a locally owned company.
And Hastings and Company, they're great.
They're awesome, and they do an incredible job for us, and I couldn't do it, so I'm happy
to say I was traveling recently, and I stopped in a big old liquor store at Blackwell, Arca Valley. Walked in and said, "You got Rocktown?" They're like, "Yeah, we sure do." I said, "Well, thank you. I think I'll buy a bottle." So, but again, they're in past Morrilton, which for folks who aren't familiar is, 60, 70 miles, 50, 60 miles from Little Rock. So, it's not nothing. So, and I've told you many times when I've seen you, out at social events, or I've seen you at Rocktown, that the tasting room is really one of my favorite bars in town. And that's for a lot of reasons. I mean, first off, you got a staff who comes up with really creative and cool drinks. The people themselves are cool, and it seems like I see a lot of the same faces that I've seen for a long time. That's particularly in this environment. I know for the owner of a hospitality business, to have consistent staff is nothing you don't take for granted. They play fun music. It's a great atmosphere. So how important is, not even counting what you're making behind the scenes or what you're selling on the shelf, and we'll get to that in a minute, but how important to your overall operation is the tasting room and the associated revenue just from the drinks and stuff that you do there?
Well, obviously it's important, from introducing people to our product, and people can take a tour, and we get visitors from all over the world, honestly. I mean, we've had people from Tokyo, from Singapore, from Europe, from Asia.
Sure.
And we've had people from, Little Rock that have never heard of us, and then they come discover us because a friend said, hey, you should go take the tour. But the actual operating of the bar, it was good that I didn't do that right out of the gate, because I called on a lot of bars trying to sell my product, and I learned a lot about how bars work and how,
good point,
cocktails are made and all that sort of stuff. So when the opportunity arose to do my own, I had a certain idea of the way I wanted it to go.
Well, right. I hadn't even thought about that part, but yeah, you're true. Now, I'm a businessman, and I also understand that when you manufacture the product versus buy it from a distributor, who in turn has bought it from the manufacturer, your cost to make a cocktail using your product is less than what it costs a non-manufacturer down the street. So, and your prices are very fair, but they're comparable prices to bars around town, except your cost of goods sold is lower for you. And I'm sure that is a business fact that is not lost on you.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And, and again, what we were talking about is you're building loyalty to your brand. I mean, how frustrating it must have been in the old days, the first year, when it's like someone says, God, I love that whiskey. I want a bottle. Oh, here's a list of liquor stores.
Yeah.
So now they can buy that. But also it's like, wow, I've never really had rye. I like this. Oh, I can buy some of that right over here.
Right.
I mean, it's just such a I don't know, blended process, and it's great. Building a loyal fan base. Mm-hmm. But again, trust me as a consumer, don't underestimate the value of those people behind the bar and just the cool vibe of the place.
I've got the best staff. We kept everybody during COVID, and it's been an amazing journey. And I couldn't have done it by myself. So I'm very lucky to have the staff I've got.
I just ran into Lynn Graham. She was going with her boyfriend to see the play at Argenta Community Theater when I was sitting at Brewed and Barley about to go watch the Razorbacks get beat.
Yeah.
So didn't know it at the time.
Right.
So you did get to the point, obviously, where you could buy a bottle of whatever you liked from Rocktown at your 6th Street facility. But again, for those who aren't familiar, as you said, when you moved there, you were the only game in that part of town, and it's now one of the hot neighborhoods. And I hope you take some pride in the fact that you got people used to coming over there before there was Rock, before there was Lost 40, and then Rebel Kettle, which now is Camp Taco, and then of course Cromwell, the largest architect engineering firm, moved in. There's some apartment. There's a cool Fidel coffee shop there. There's a restaurant, but where you are now is in the neighborhood that we refer to as Soma, South Main, and you're at about 12th Street-ish.
Right, 12th.
And it goes on down to about 16th, 17th, but you're in a real entertainment restaurant-y district there. You have better parking, plenty of street parking. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine that the retail sales on South Main greatly outstrip the retail sales on 6th Street.
They do. Yeah.
Which is pretty sweet. And then there's something that's another sweet spot, and I'm getting more jealous of your business model all the time. There's Sunday sales, because in the state of Arkansas, only in the mid 90s to late 90s could you buy even a drink in a establishment. You could go in and get a beer or get a Bloody Mary on a Sunday. And you still can't go into a grocery store or a liquor store and buy a 6-pack of beer. And liquor stores aren't open at all on Sundays in Little Rock. There's a few little outposts that have had local options to vote it in. But you can come to Rocktown on Sunday and buy packaged liquor.
That's right.
So I would only imagine, again, these are all pretty obvious conclusions, that your Sunday bottle sales has got to be larger than your Tuesday bottle sales.
That's a correct assumption. Yes. Yeah, we do pretty well on Sundays, and the move to Main Street has certainly helped that.
You just got so much more traffic, and again, it's a really inviting place. And I will tell you that when the pandemic hit, you guys, and I'm going to use one of those words, you pivoted. And started making hand sanitizer.
Right.
And sold a lot of that hand sanitizer.
We did. And we donated a ton of it, too.
You did donate a ton of it.
Yeah.
And I remember being in a line out the door, because your physical, like everybody, you weren't selling cocktails at your bar. That was shut down.
Right.
But you had sales, and there was a line of about 8, 10, 12 people. And whatever that number was, you subtract 1, and you have all the hand sanitizer bottles, and you have the vodka buyer. That was me. But that had to have been a good feeling and good PR for you guys stepping up, particularly because you couldn't just walk into a Walgreens and get hand sanitizer.
Yeah, well, we were doing what we could, and we had the ability to make the alcohol and mix it and bottle it. So, I had no idea that was going to be such the thing that it was, right? I assumed it would be kind of like, oh, yeah, we're fine without, but people wanted it, and it got to be a huge thing there for, 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy.
I was standing behind the guy was in front of me in line, works for Waste Management, and he empties trash cans. And he said, you know what? I need hand sanitizer about as bad as anybody needs hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
So you have made the decision, and probably because you don't have a kitchen, that you don't have a food menu other than some snacks.
Right.
And I appreciate pub mix, which, think Gardettos, cheese balls. Think of those big 5-gallon or whatever they are, clear plastic vats you see at the grocery store, and then little candy bars, and think about Halloween. And again, that's not a moneymaker for you, but it's nice to have something to nosh on. Is that just kind of what y'all decided? Let's just have some stuff for people to chomp on while they're having a cocktail?
Yeah. I'm not a restaurateur.
Right.
I didn't want to learn a whole nother business. So, let's just skip that. And, I don't need to also make a cheeseburger.
Yeah, and you got food trucks that hang out in your parking lot.
Yeah,
and you've got some of the best restaurants in town within a 1, 2, 3 block walk of your place.
And you can order from one of them and bring it over and eat it at our place if you want.
Nobody cares. Yeah. Well, and again, I appreciate you having beer and wine. You don't produce those, but again, you got people coming in that might not be cocktail people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to be able to, if your friend is like, I don't want, I just want a beer, bring your friend, because we have that too.
Yeah. And I do like, too, that you've got a continuously changing list of specialty drinks that you have. Then also, you always have a drink of the week that's like about a half-price drink. And I was asking one of your friendly folks behind the bar, and I said, is there somebody in particular who comes up with all these? Like, no, it's a group effort. We all think about what we have and how we might put it together. I said, yeah, and you also do taste test. That's the key here. You want an excuse for trying some of this fabulous stuff.
Right, yeah. They rotate the drink of the week, and everybody gets to, have their chance to make a drink they want to do. So
Well, it gives them ownership and pride in what they're creating. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So here you are. You've got award-winning whiskeys, and you've won more awards than the one we talked about in 2013 for sure. You got a brisk retail business. You got a popular tour that goes out 18 times a week. You're doing cocktail classes, and you have one of the coolest bars in town. And if you didn't want to do anything else, you'd be fine. Is there anything else you've got in terms of new products or projects that you want to tease us with or not?
The thing we didn't really talk about is that we are distributed outside of Arkansas. Okay, so we're in Maryland, Delaware, D.C., Massachusetts, Connecticut, Illinois, Georgia, Oklahoma. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, Michigan. So, that's where we actually have physical distribution with a distributor.
Wow.
We also do online sales for about 43 states through, a legal online channel where we sell it to a distributor that sells it to a retailer that in their particular state has a license to ship, and they ship to the states that allow it, and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So,
We're going to continue to try to grow that network, because once you get online, as long as you said it's legal in those states, the sky's kind of the limit on that.
Right. So that's been a new channel for us this year. So that's been huge. And then, our biggest market outside of Arkansas is Maryland, Delaware, and D.C.
It's interesting.
And Delaware, the beaches. Maryland has beaches. And the summers, we're all up and down the beaches there with Rocktown Vodka. And we're also in, New Jersey's a great market for us.
How did those sales happen?
Just, hard work.
Just being on the spot and with your product and
people read about our awards in trade magazines, and they call us up and say, hey, we'd really love to sell your product up here.
Yeah, and there's trucks that can take it there.
Yeah, right.
Because when you think about expanding outside your home state, people would assume it's just the contiguous states. We're barely over in Tennessee and barely in Mississippi, but no, you're off in the Northeast where there's a lot more people.
Yeah, well, and there's that, and that Mississippi has different laws than New Jersey does, and Mississippi's laws are really hard to navigate and to sell your product there because it's what's known as a control state.
Okay.
So you sell it to the state of Mississippi, and they require you to do it through consignment and all this crap and bailment and blah, blah, blah.
So, yeah.
And it's just like, no, Mississippi, I'll go sell in New Jersey first. And if I get the rest of the country filled in,
We might come back.
we might come back to Mississippi.
Are you running, I mean, what, do you have a sense of what percentage of your product is sold outside Arkansas versus in?
It's probably, close to 50% in Arkansas and then 50% everywhere else.
That's good to know. I would have certainly assumed it was much smaller. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. And are you all, again, you said, if I remember my numbers correctly, you went from 15,000 square feet to 26,000 square feet. Are you think you're, assuming, again, everything being a level playing field and COVID doesn't come back and whomp us too hard, if everything's normal, do you sense a time down the road that you might be capacity constrained in your location, or would you just then get an auxiliary location, or would you think about a move?
Yeah, so we have a warehouse offsite from the main street that's 14,000 square feet that we store empty bottles, empty boxes, all that kind of stuff in, dry goods,
right,
if you will. But that's becoming full. So, yeah, I hope to build a much larger facility down the road that would also have, barrel warehouses that, if you've ever been to Kentucky and taken the tours, the rick houses where they age bourbon and other whiskeys are enormous. And it's a big part of it, and proper aging is critical. And I really need a place where I can build one of these or several of them,
right,
and fill them up, for a duration. So I'm in the process of working on that. Just like when I started this thing 11, 12 years ago, the people that are in the, economic development type roles just don't understand it.
Yeah. Oh, I believe it. But the point is, you don't have to age the whiskey right on your side. You can age the whiskey wherever. Now, you got to bottle it.
Yeah.
And
we've got a bottling facility, but, and then we need, more still capacity. So it's, as
the old cliche goes, nice problem to have.
It is. But it is a thing, and if we're going to continue to grow and continue to move forward and not just say, well, we're just going to stop right here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
We as humans, I think, always want to, continue to improve. At least I do.
Sure.
And I'm not happy doing the exact same thing, day in and day out.
Well, and doing more of it, and maximizing the potential of the opportunity. And let's see how much I've got to make before people get tired of buying it. As long as they're happy buying it, I'm going to make more and we're going to sell more.
Yeah.
That's super. I'm kind of getting goosebumps over here. That's fabulous. Well, listen, I really appreciate it, Phil, for being my guest today on Heaping Spoonful.
Oh, yeah.
Continued good luck. You got me as a fan, and you got obviously tens of hundreds of thousands of more all up and down the Eastern Seaboard, I have learned. And so good luck as your team and you create new and fabulous spirits at Rocktown. And we appreciate all of you listening to Heaping Spoonful today. We really do. Remember, we post new episodes of Heaping Spoonful the first and third Tuesday of each month. So keep an ear and an eye out for new ones, and go back and check out some of the ones you've missed. They're timeless, let me tell you. All right, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods, Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.